Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ivan and I'm a commercial still life photographer. This video is a part of my online jewelry photography course in which I teach professional jewelry photography. So if you are into jewelry photography or commercial photography, please consider subscribing to the channel as I have many new videos coming soon. If you like this video, I will appreciate you hitting that like button, and you have the link to my online jewelry photography course in the description below. Enjoy the video and please let me know in the comments if there is anything that you would like to know regarding jewelry photography, and I will do my best to make some videos on the subject. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Every lens includes an aperture mechanism. Aperture refers to the opening of a lens diaphragm through which light passes. The aperture is one of the three main settings that comprise the exposure triangle, and it is an essential subject you need to understand in order to gain full control of your photography. First, the aperture controls the amount of light that enters your camera. The f-stop number, or f number, is the setting that controls the size of the aperture and therefore how much light can pass through the camera lens. F numbers are determined by the ratio of the diameter of the aperture to the focal length of a lens. A small aperture has a higher f-stop, whereas a large aperture has a small f-stop number. Smaller aperture let in less light, so naturally, larger aperture let in more light. The maximum aperture, which can open up as wide as f0.95 with some lenses, let in the most light. All cameras can have a minimum aperture as narrow as f16. Macro lenses usually close up to f32, and large format camera lenses can have a minimum aperture of f128. The aperture also affects the depth of field in our images. Depth of field by definition is the distance between the nearest and furthest objects that are in acceptably sharp focus in an image. In other words, how sharp or blurry is the area in front and behind our point of focus. The lower the f-stop, the larger the opening in the lens, and we get less depth of field. The background will become blurry. The higher the f-stop, the smaller the opening in the lens, and we get deeper depth of field. The background will become sharp. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? We can just open up the aperture where we want to have shallow depth of field, and close the aperture down when we want to have deep depth of field. So, when we want to have our subject fully in focus, we would just close the aperture to the maximum settings like f32 and get high quality close-up images. In reality, it doesn't work this way. It is actually a little more complicated than this. Depth of field is actually affected by three criteria: the aperture's f-stop, as I've just mentioned, but also by the lens's focal length and the focusing distance. Lenses with wider focal length will produce deeper depth of field than longer focal length lenses, and also focusing close to a subject with any lens will produce a shallow depth of field. This is just how lenses work. That means that when we are trying to take close-up images, which is done commonly with telephoto lenses ranging from 80mm to 120mm, and we are focusing very close to our subject, the depth of field becomes really shallow, and that is a real issue that we need to overcome. As I have mentioned before, photography is all about compromises. So when we are trying to get deep depth of field in our images, stopping the lens down to f32 will not work. In reality, every lens has a specific aperture settings that will deliver optimal quality results, usually in the middle range. Every setting beyond the optimal range will degrade the final image quality. Shooting a lens wide open introduces artifacts such as soft focus, chromatic aberrations, vignetting, and low contrast images. On the other hand, when we stop the lens down past to a certain point, we start to have a focus softening effect called diffraction. When we are dealing with macro photography, diffraction is our biggest enemy when it comes to image quality. Let's have a closer look at the effects of diffraction. In this example, we can see an image of a ring shot at f4 and zoomed in to 100%. We can see that the image is very sharp at the focus point, but the depth of field is very shallow and most of the ring is out of focus. As expected when shooting close-up at f4, we can't see any of the details in the back of the ring, and we get an image that is mostly blurry and undefined, which is usually not what we want when we are trying to show potential clients what we're selling. Our goal is to have a clear view of the product. Next is the same shot at f5.6. we can see that the image is still very sharp with moderately larger depth of field, but still very shallow and nowhere near having the full ring in focus. Let's look at f8. Still sharp, and we can see that the depth of field has increased. Here is f11. We can start noticing some softness in the image compared to the f8 image. At f16, we can see that diffraction starts to have a stronger effect on the image sharpness. At f22, we continue to see how image sharpness has been reduced dramatically. And at f32, we have basically lost all of the fine details in the image, and the resulting image looks very soft. Let's try to understand why this is happening. As a general rule, light travels in straight lines, but when light waves passes through an obstacle such as the aperture inside our lens, they tend to bend around that obstacle and become spread out. More specifically, diffraction of light occurs when a light wave passes through an opening that is physically the approximate size or even smaller than that light's wavelength. Every lens will have a sweet spot in which we will get optimal image quality and sharpness, which will be usually about 2 stops from wide open. So if we are shooting a lens that has a maximum aperture of f2.8, our best bet will be using that lens at f5.6 to f8. Finding the lens's sweet spot is not difficult. Just take some shots at different aperture settings and you will be able to see for yourself where the effects of diffraction start to become noticeable. Diffraction is also determined by your camera and lens combination. Cameras with higher megapixel count will show diffraction much sooner than low count megapixel cameras. This is happening because of the pixel size in your camera. The smaller the pixel size, the sooner you will see the effects of diffraction. For example, if you shoot on a 20 megapixel camera, you can shoot it around f11 before you will start to see diffraction effects. While if you use a 50 megapixel camera, you will start to see diffraction effects at around f5.6. This is happening due to something that is called the airy disk. The airy disk is a pattern created when light passes through a small round opening such as the lens aperture, and it looks something like this. The width of the airy disk is used to define the maximum resolution for a camera sensor. As long as the airy disk fits the size of the pixel, we do not get diffraction. But once the airy disk becomes bigger than the pixel, we start to see the effects of diffraction. That means that if we use the same aperture with 2 different cameras, the camera with the smaller pixel size will start to show diffraction sooner than the bigger sized pixel camera. Once again, testing your own camera and lens combination is the best way to really understand where your camera will start to be affected by diffraction. So, we can understand that in order to get highly detailed images, we will need to shoot at an aperture setting of around f5.6 to f8. At these settings, depth of field will become a problem as most of the image will be out of focus, and we usually want highly detailed images with sharp focus all across our subject. In the next section of the course, I will teach you 2 of the main techniques for controlling the depth of field and having our entire subject in focus without degrading the image quality due to diffraction. See you in the next video.